Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session. In this session, we are going to look into the module 5, where we study about the three-phase synchronous generator, which is also called as a AC generator. Okay, and we are going to look into the three-phase induction motor. Basically, these are AC generator, also called as synchronous generator or alternator, and this is a AC motor, which is called as a induction three-phase induction motor. Okay, so first is three-phase synchronous generator, also called as AC generator alternator. This is the machine which converts mechanical energy into three-phase electrical energy, called as a three-phase AC generator or alternator or synchronous generator. So they can use any kind of a name, AC generator or alternator, or they are used synchronous generator. That name is also most frequently they use the name alternator. Three-phase synchronous generator or alternator works on the electromagnetic induction principle. That is, when flux linking with a conductor changes, and EMF will be induced in it. So just remember, all the generators, they work on the Faraday's first law. What is the Faraday's first law? The flux linking with the whenever flux linking with the coil or conductor changes, and EMF is induced in that particular body. That is the principle of generation, whether it's a DC generator or a AC generator. And for motor, the motor works on the principle, whenever a current carrying conductor is placed in a magnetic field, it experiences a force. That is the principle of operation of a motor. I will repeat: whenever current carrying conductor is placed in a magnetic field, it experiences a force. Alternator, it consists of two main parts. One is called as a stator, and another is a rotor. Stator, on the top of the stator, we will be having the armature winding, and on the rotor, we will be having the field winding. So we'll see the construction. In the alternator, the armature winding is a stationary, means it doesn't move. The stator is the stationary part of the machine, and rotor, that is the magnetic field. We will be having the field winding that rotates. Okay, by keeping the armature winding stationary, there are many advantages. So this is one of the question they will ask: what is the advantage of having the armature winding stationary? So some of the advantage is, it is easier to insulate the stationary winding for high voltages. I told you the power that is generated, alternator power, the voltage that is generated is very very high, 11,000 volts, 33,000 volts, 66,000 volts. That is the level of the voltage that is generated. And if the winding is stationary, it is very easy to insulate those wires. Stationary three-phase armature voltage can be directly connected to load. So because the armature winding is constant, where EMF is not constant, it is a static, means stationary. We can easily connect the external load to that armature winding. And only two slip rings are required for the DC supply. For the DC supply that is given to the field winding, we need only two slip rings, because we are making it as a rotating part. I will show it in the construction. Rotating part, we need only two slip rings to connect to the field winding. That is the advantage. Due to simple and robust construction of the rotor, high speed of rotating DC field is possible. So because we have such a robust construction, we can use the field winding can be, because just the field winding is on the rotating part, we can achieve a very high rotation of the field winding. Construction, there are two main parts, as I told you, stator and the rotor. Please refer to the book for the very neat diagram. So this is the stator part. Okay, inside the stator part, we have the slots on the inner periphery, and we place the three-phase winding RYB. We already discussed about the three-phase. The R phase winding, Y phase winding, and B phase winding is wound on these stator windings, that forms a armature winding, and these are the three phase supply. So these are the three ends of the three phases RYB. If it is connected in the star, we are going to get the 4 wire. If it is connected in the delta, we are going to get the 3 wires. And in case of our alternator, this armature winding is connected in the star fashion. Okay, then this is the rotating part of the alternator, and on this we will be having the field winding. Stationary rotor, it is the stationary part of the machine. That is rotor. Stator is the this one. So outer stator, which is a static, having a slots on the inner periphery, and all the three phase windings are placed in those slots. It is a stationary part of the machine and made up of thin steel lamination to reduce the losses. The stator having slots on its inner periphery. A phase winding is placed in the three-phase winding is placed in these slots and serves as an armature winding. The armature winding or stator winding connected in star, and neutral is connected to the ground. And rotor carries the winding called as a field winding, which is supplied from the DC source through slip rings. Because on the rotor we are going to have the field winding, means we need a winding to create the magnetic field, right? And how do we create the magnetic field? Using the DC supply. DC supply given to the magnetic DC supply connected to the winding, it will produce the magnetic field. This DC source is called as an exciter. There are two types of rotors, uh, salient pole rotor and the non-salient pole rotor. So in the examination, very important question, give the construction of an alternator or synchronous generator. You have to talk about the first, there are two parts. Then talk about the stator, draw this diagram, not this diagram, refer to the book for the neat diagram. Draw the diagram, explain about the stator, and explain about the rotor. In case of a rotor, there are two types, salient pole and non-salient pole. So salient pole, if in case of a salient pole, we have protruding poles. So these are the protruding poles. That is what is the salient pole rotor. And this is the cylindrical structure, on top of which the this salient pole structure is fixed. Okay, so you can see there are four such poles, and on top of that we have the field winding. So you can see the field winding, one end is connected to the brush. These are the slip rings. Okay, this is the shaft. Okay, rotor shaft. On top of that we have two slip rings. On the two slip ring we have brush. Okay, brush. And you can see the brush, this is connected to this winding. So we have this winding. This winding is rotated in such a way to either produce a south pole or the north pole. The same winding will continue onto the next pole shoe, and it will be in series with the next winding. So just the direction of the winding will change according whether we need a south pole or the north pole, and the other end of the wire will come to the negative. To this brush we give the DC supply. When we give the DC supply, because this is going to be a rotated, so what is a generator? Generator is nothing but a machine which converts the mechanical energy into electrical energy. So using that mechanical energy we are going to rotate this. For example, hydroelectric power plant, we use the water force, right, to rotate the turbines. And turbines are connected, to this rotor, and turbines will the water jets will rotate the turbine is connected to this rotor, it will rotate the rotor, and this rotor is wound with a field winding, and that field winding is given DC supply. So what happens is we are creating a field, and we are rotating that magnetic field, and our outer armature is static. There are three phase windings. It will start cutting the flux. Okay, as the flux linked with the conductor changes, EMF will be induced in those three phase. That is how we get the three phase power at these three ends. So here we get the three phase power because we are going to give the DC supply to the rotor winding, field winding, and we are going to rotate this. When we going to rotate this, the field, magnetic field is rotating. All these windings are experiencing change in the flux. Whenever there is a change in the flux, EMF is induced. That is how we get the three-phase supply at these three-phase terminals. So very, very important question from the exam. Please prepare this. In salient pole rotor, poles are mounted on a large steel frame, which is fixed on the shaft as shown in the figure. So it is fixed on this particular shaft. Field windings are connected in series, connected to DC supply. Salient pole rotors are used for the low or medium speed. Because of the way the salient poles are constructed, it is not used for the very high speed, because mechanically it is not very strong. So it is used for the low or the medium speeds, that is like around 120 to 400 rpm. Maybe it is used in the hydroelectric power plant, where the speed is relatively less. As a low speed rotor are there, these are having large diameters and short axial length to provide necessary space for the poles. So these salient poles type of motor rotors will be having a large diameter, means their diameters is very high, but the length is very short. In the exam, they might ask you the question, explain, give the constructional details of an alternator, or they might say give the construction of a salient pole alternator. Most common, whenever they ask the question, explain the constructional details of a salient pole type of alternator, people will just give the rotor and give the explanation. But when we say alternator, you have to give the details of the stator as well. So please remember, stator you have to explain, draw the diagram, explain stator, and in rotor you have to explain the only salient type. And same, they might ask a non-salient type. That time you have to explain stator, and then you explain the non-salient pole type. Uh, Next one is salient pole construction cannot be made strong enough to withstand the mechanical stresses for the higher speed. Because of its construction, it is designed for the low speed. Non-salient pole, on the other hand, it doesn't have any protruding poles. Everything looks like a cylindrical structure, mechanically very sturdy, and it can be used for a very high speed. So it is having a this rotor is having slots on the outer periphery, and inside these slots we place the field winding, and the end of that field winding is connected to the two slip rings, and on those two slip rings there are brushes, and to these brushes we connect the DC supply. That is how we create the magnetic field. In non-salient type rotor, it consists of a slots along outer periphery. The field windings are inserted inside these slots as shown in the figure. These windings are connected in series, connected to DC supply through the slip rings. Some of the features of the non-salient pole are these rotors are used for very high-speed alternators, 1500, 3000 rpm. So it's like in thermal power plant, nuclear power plant, where we can achieve very high pressured steam, by which we can have a very high speed. We can use non-salient pole alternators in that kind of a power generation. These rotors are having small diameters and long axial lengths. The rotor gives a noiseless operation at high speed. Because of its construction, it almost gives a very noiseless operation at even at a very high speed. We can obtain high strength construction to withstand the mechanical stresses because of these rotors having small diameters and long axial length. Because the diameter is small and length is longer, mechanically it is very, very strong to run at a very high speed. Now, alternator working. So we already talked about the alternator working in brief. Now you understand what is a armature winding, what is a field winding. Uh, the field winding is given with a supply. So we have here, this is the field winding, right? This is the rotor, and these are these winding is connected to the two slip rings which is mounted on the shaft, and on top of the slip rings we have the brush, and to this brush we give the external DC supply around 250 volts DC or 300 volt DC, depend upon the design. We give the DC supply to this winding. It will create a magnetic field, and using the external mechanical energy we are going to rotate this rotor. So what happens, you can imagine the field is rotated. Just imagine it will create a north south pole like this, and we are going to rotate that north south pole with a certain speed. What will happen is the flux linked with these conductors, which is armature conductors, which is having three phase of a winding, they will start experiencing the change in the flux. Whenever there is a change in the flux, as per the Faraday's first law, EMF is induced, a three phase power is generated in this three terminals, and this is taken as the three phase supply and connected to the load. Alternator consists of stator and rotor. Rotor is mounted on shaft, in which rotor or field winding is mounted on thin lamination steel frame. When DC supply is given through brush from externally, a constant magnetic flux is produced. When this flux rotates using a mechanical power, this constant magnetic flux line cuts the conductors which are in the stator, that is the armature winding. Hence, EMF will be induced in those armature winding as per the Faraday's first law. So that is the working principle of operation. Then frequency of the induced EMF, how much, this is a small derivation, they might ask it for like 3 to 4 marks, very small derivation. What would be the frequency of the generated EMF? Okay. Consider an alternator having P number of rotor poles, the number of poles is P, and F is the frequency of the EMF in hertz, N is the rotor speed, this is the speed with which we are rotating. To complete one cycle of EMF, conductor will pass two poles. If you remember, like for creating one cycle of EMF, the conductor has to move through the two poles, that is north and south. If you remember, we talked about the generation of the sinusoidal voltage or the current. We took the current, we took the conductor, and we rotated in a magnetic field. We had a two poles, north and south. We started from position 1, position 2 under north, position 3, position 4 under south, and back to the original. So we when we moved from the position 1, it started from 0. When under the north pole it was maximum. When position 3, again 0. Then position 4 under the south pole, it was maximum under negative cycle. And when we come to the position 1, back to the position 1, it was 0. So one cycle of EMF is produced by two poles, that is north and south. So what is the number of cycles that are created per one revolution? So if I make a one revolution, how many cycles are created? It depends on how many poles are there. If there are two poles, then one cycle is created. If there are four poles, two cycles are created. If there are 10 poles, five cycles are created. So it depends on number of poles. So number of cycles created per one revolution is half of the number of poles. If there are four poles, two cycles are created. If number of poles are P, then P divided by 2, that is the number of cycles that will be created per one revolution. And number of revolutions per second, we know what is the N is the speed, that is the number of revolutions or rotations per minute. Per second, revolutions per second, N divided by 60. What we want to calculate, number of cycles per second. So if I multiply this and this, what I get, number of cycles, okay, into this, the revolution will get cancelled, it will become number of, if I multiply this entity and this entity, I get number of cycles per second. Therefore P by 2 into N by 60. So that is how I get the frequency formula. F is equal to Pn divided by 120. Now we know that what is the generated frequency? Generated frequency is given by F is equal to P into N into 120. So where P is the number of poles, N is the speed of the rotor. Now we know that in generating station, how they control the speed. They want to maintain a same frequency. In India, the frequency is 50 hertz. P, number of poles cannot be changed for a given alternator. So what can be changed? Speed is changed. So they will control the speed of the rotor in a such a way they produce the 50 hertz. Okay, this is constant. So in order to have 50 hertz, they will control the speed accordingly. It may be noted that the number of P is the number of poles, N synchronous speed generally noted by Ns. So we'll see what is the Ns. We'll understand it better in the when we discuss about the induction motor. Now, EMF equation is very, very important. Derivation of the EMF equation. Many times it has been asked in the exam. So we'll consider number of conductors per phase, that is Z. So you remember here, number of conductors per phase means each phase is having Z conductors. R phase is having Z conductors, Y phase is having Z conductor, phi phase is having Z conductors. Phi is flux per pole. You remember what is the phi? It is not the total flux, it is flux per pole in Webers. P, number of poles. N, rotor speed in RPM. We know from Faraday's second law. What is Faraday's second law? Faraday's first law, how EMF is induced. Second, Faraday's second law, how much EMF is induced is answered by the second Faraday's law. What is second Faraday's law? The magnitude of the EMF induced is directly proportional to the rate of change of the flux linkage. So that we can say as E is proportional to d phi by dt, or E is equal to n d phi by dt. So here don't get confused with this n. This n is the number of turns. So we are going to consider it for only one conductor. So n is equal to 1. So E is equal to d phi by dt. This n is, we are using it as a rotor speed. Okay, so E is equal to what? We'll just going to calculate for the one conductor, then we will multiply with Z. Z is the total number of conductors. So total number of conductors per phase. So we will get the phase voltage for each of the phase. That is how we will calculate. In one revolution, that is 60 by n second, each conductor is cut P into 5 Weber. Means in suppose there are four poles in one revolution. Each conductor will go through all the four poles, and each pole is having 5. So if there are P is the number of poles, how much flux is cut by the conductor? P into F. That is in one revolution. That is 60 by n. So d phi is equal to p phi. This is the total flux cut by the conductor. And how much time it will take? 60 by n. So that is the time it takes to make one revolution. Therefore, the average EMF induced in one conductor, so n is 1, E is equal to 1, d phi is this p phi divided by dt. dt is 60 by n. If I put this, I get the average EMF induced. This is the average EMF induced in one conductor. This is one conductor. E is equal to P phi N divided by 60. So how many conductors are there per one phase? There are Z conductors. So in one conductor, this much EMF is produced. In Z conductors, multiply by Z. Therefore, average EMF per phase is equal to P phi N divided by 60 into Z. And we know that formula for the N is frequency formula. We know that F is equal to NP divided by 120, or we can say N is equal to 120 F divided by P. If I substitute this N value here, okay, as 120 F by P, what we get is average EMF per phase is equal to 2 F phi Z. Okay, the P will get cancelled. 60 ones are 62 is 120. So finally we get it as 2 F phi Z. 2 F phi Z, where F is the frequency, supply frequency, phi is the flux per pole, Z is the number of conductors per phase. Now this is the average value. You remember we represent the alternating quantity in the RMS value. Most frequently we represent it in the RMS value, and there is a relation between the RMS value and the average value given by the form factor. What is the form factor? Form factor is the ratio of the RMS value to the average value. So if I want RMS value is equal to average value into the form factor. Therefore, RMS value of EMF per phase is equal to average value per phase into form factor. And if you remember, for the sinusoidal waveform, the form factor is a constant and it is 1.11. Therefore, the RMS value of EMF per phase is equal to 2f5z, that is the average EMF per phase, into 1.11. Therefore, the RMS value of the value of the voltage induced per phase is equal to 2.22 f5z. Very, very important equation derivation from the exam perspective. Also, there will be simple problems based on this relation. ERMS per phase is equal to 2.22 f5z volts. There are two winding factors are there. There is no derivation required. Just if you understand, define those factors and give their formula, that is sufficient. One is called as the pitch factor and another is called as the distribution factor. If we consider the winding factors, that is Kp and Kd, the RMS ERMS per phase is equal to 2.22 Kp Kd F5Z. And if you consider, instead of here, in case here Kp is the pitch factor, Kd is the distribution factor. If it is not given in the problem, you take it as, assume it as 1. And if it is a full pitch, then Kp is equal to 1. F is the frequency, phi is the flux per pole, Z is the number of conductor per phase. Instead of number of conductors, if they give the turns, so normally there are two conductors per one turn. So you can take the equation as 4.44 kp kd f phi t. So here t is the number of turns. So distribution factor, also called as the breadth factor, is the ratio of the EMF with a distributed winding to the EMF with a concentrated winding. This is the formula. Okay. Sine n alpha by 2 divided by n sine alpha by 2. So there won't be any problems based on distribution factor. So you need not remember the formula. Just remember this definition. It's a ratio of a EMF with a distributed winding to the concentrated winding. Meaning of this is, let us say you have like 100 slots, and you have distributed all the conductors in all the 100 slots. Okay, instead of that, then whatever the EMF is generated, you take that. In this concentrated winding, instead of having 100 slots, you just have 2 slots. You concentrated all your winding in 2 slots. EMF generated, whatever is the EMF generated, that ratio is always the KD. Okay, similar to that, pitch factor, EMF induced in the short pitch coil divided by the EMF induced in the full pitch. Short pitch is what? The pitch means what? Between when we have the north and pole, so between north and pole, that width is called as the pitch, one full pitch. If my winding goes under north and it comes under south pole, then I would say that winding is a full pitch. If it doesn't, if it takes lesser slots than that, then it is called as a short pitch. Okay, EMF induced in the short pitch coil divided by the EMF induced in the full pitch coil. So the maximum value for the KD and KP is 1. So either its value ranges from 0 to 1. Okay, that completes the alternator. We will see few problems based on the alternator, or I will share a PDF. There are very simple problems that are based on the EMF equation, and also we have problems based on the induction motor. First is, what is the principle of operation of a motor? As I told you, whenever we place a current carrying conductor in a magnetic field, it experiences a force. Okay, that is the principle of operation of any kind of a motor. What is a three-phase induction motor? Three-phase induction motor which converts the three-phase AC supply into a mechanical energy, and it works on the induction principle, called the three-phase induction motor. So principle of operation, when three-phase supply is given to the stator, rotating magnetic field is produced around the stator, rotates at a speed of a synchronous speed, which is given by Ns is equal to 120 F by P. The rotating flux passes through the air gap and cuts the rotor conductors as the flux rotating, which links with the rotor conductors, and EMF is induced in the rotor conductor. Okay, so what happens is, here the construction, we have the stator. Here on the stator we have the armature winding, and inside we have the rotor, and rotor has the rotor winding, and this rotor is mounted on the shaft. When we give this on the stator, what kind of a winding we have? Three-phase winding we have. Okay, to this three-phase winding we give the three-phase power supply. So there is a one concept, we are going to learn that concept in another 5-10 minutes. What is that is, whenever we give a three-phase supply to a three-phase winding, it will create a rotating magnetic field. So when I give a three-phase supply here, it inside here it will create a rotating magnetic field. You can just imagine there is a north and south pole which rotates inside this with a certain speed, which is called as a synchronous speed. And what is how do we calculate the synchronous speed? Synchronous speed is calculated as with using the formula 120 into F divided by P, where F is the supply frequency, whatever the supply we are giving, supply frequency. P is the number of poles. So when we gave the three-phase supply to three-phase winding on the stator, rotating magnetic field is created, and when rotating magnetic field is rotating, the rotor conductors, which are static, they experience the change in the flux. So when they experience change in the flux, EMF is induced inside their winding. When EMF is induced, this will be connected in a either there are two ways of connection. Uh, s- Sorry for the interruption. Right. Okay, when we give the three-phase power, it will create a rotating magnetic field, and when we create the when a rotating magnetic field gets associated with this conductors, initially it will be stationary. The conductor will experience the change in the flux. EMF will be induced in the rotor conductors, and the rotor conductors are short circuited, or either there will be there are two type of rotors, a squirrel cage or the wound type. Based on that type, they will be having a closed path. So because there is a closed path, induced EMF will produce an induced current. So current will start flowing through those conductors. Now this is the situation. A current carrying conductors are placed in a magnetic field. So each of these conductors will experience a force, and cumulatively it will experience a force on all the conductors. Because it is mounted on a shaft, it will experience a torque. Each of these conductors will experience a torque. With that cumulative torque, the rotor will slowly starts rotating. Okay, the rotor will start rotating in order to oppose the cause which is making it to rotate. And what is the cause that is making it to rotate? The change in the flux, the rotating magnetic flux. So slowly it will start running, and it will try to catch up the speed, synchronous speed. Okay, that synchronous speed, when it catches up the synchronous speed, then there will not be any change in the magnetic flux. But that condition will never happen. There will be always a little bit speed which is less than the synchronous speed. Means it will rotate with a speed less than the synchronous speed. That difference is called as the slip. Suppose if the synchronous speed is 1500 rpm, maybe this rotor will rotate with a speed of 1440 or 1450 rpm. So that is how the induction motor operates. Okay, when three-phase supply is given to the stator, rotating magnetic field is produced around the stator, rotates at a speed of synchronous speed. The rotating flux passes through air gap and cuts the rotor conductors. As flux is rotating, which links with the rotor stationary conductors, and EMF is induced in rotor conductors. Since a rotor circuit is short circuited, current starts flowing in the rotor conductors. When current carrying conductor is placed in a magnetic field, it experiences a mechanical force. Sum of all mechanical force of conductor is a torque which moves the rotor in the direction of the rotor is to find by Fleming's left hand rule. Suppose if you want to find which direction the force will act, that can be found out using the Fleming's left hand rule. Constructional details, similar to alternator, it has two main parts, stator and the rotor. Stator is a stationary part having slots on the inner periphery, and it will be having the three-phase winding, to which we give the three-phase AC supply. And rotor, there are two types of rotors are there, squirrel cage and the wound type. And based on whether all the conductors are short circuited or we have included external resistance, we will have the two types of the rotors. Stator consists of a steel frame made up of thin laminations of silicon steel to reduce hysteresis and eddy current loss. A number of even space slots are provided on the inner periphery of the stator, where insulated conductors are placed and connected to the phase supply. When supply is given to the stator, rotating magnetic field is produced. This field passes through the air gap and produces the current in the rotor conductors. The rotor is mounted on a shaft made up with a thin lamination. At outer periphery, slots are made to insert the conductors. There are two types of rotors: squirrel cage rotor and the wound rotor. Okay, so rotor, just imagine it is a cylindrical structure having slots on the outer periphery, and inside that slots we place the copper conductors. So all these are the copper conductors, and on this is the shaft on which it is mounted. This is the shaft on which it is mounted. At the two ends you can see end ring. And what is this end ring? Is just a ring of a copper which will connect all these conductors. So this end ring will make contact with all the conductors on this end. Basically it will short circuit all these conductors, and this end ring will short circuit all these conductors. Means what? When rotating magnetic field cuts these conductors, EMF is produced. Because it is a closed loop, current will large amount of current will flow, and the current carrying conductors is placed in a magnetic field experiences a force. That is how this rotor starts rotating. This is called as a squirrel cage. If you see here, it looks like a squirrel cage, and this is the wound type of a rotor. In case of a wound type of a rotor, here what happens is the speed cannot be controlled. So because the resistance is same, the amount of current that flows is exactly the same. Here we can control the amount of current, okay, because we have included some external resistances. One end is short circuited, and other end of the this three phase winding, okay, this is connected to one slip ring, another phase to another slip ring, and this is to another slip ring, and through brushes it is connected to an a three phase resistance. So this is a three phase resistance where I can vary the resistance value. That is how I can include a I can change the resistance of the armature winding. In case a squirrel cage rotor, in this rotor, conductors are inserted on outer periphery and joined to each end by the metal rings called the end rings. These conductors permanently short circuited, hence the resistance of rotor conductors cannot be changed, hence the speed of the motor also. In case of the wound rotor, in this motor, rotor conductors are inserted similar to the squirrel cage, but these conductors shorted at one end, but another end there are conductors connected to slip rings which are mounted on the same shaft. Through these slip rings, external resistance is connected. I shown you the external resistances are connected, so that we can change the rotor resistance, so that resistance of the rotor conductor can be changed as the current in rotor circuit, that in turn changes the speed of the rotor. So we can change the speed. Rotating magnetic field, very very important question. Many times it has been asked. They will ask either explain the rotating magnetic field concept, or they will say prove that a three phase supply given to three phase winding produces a rotating magnetic field. Okay, so this is assume this is the three phases. This is R phase. Okay, R phase. So you can see this is R phase, this is the one end, this is the another end, this is Y phase, okay, Y phase 120-degree apart, this is the one end, this is another end, and this is B phase, okay. So 240-degree apart with respect to R phase, this is one end, this is another end. So if you observe here, this R dash, Y dash and B dash, they are connected, so it is in the a star fashion. And we know, if we draw the phasor diagram, if this is phi r, 120-degree lagging phi y, 240-degree lagging phi b, and if we draw the currents, the phase currents in each of these phases, R phase will start from 0, Y phase after 120-degree, B phase after 240-degree, and the magnitude, these are the currents that will flow in the R phase, Y phase and the B phase, and they will create a magnetic, IR will produce a magnetic field, phi R, and IY produces the magnetic field phi Y, this produces the magnetic field phi B. And what would be this magnetic field produced by IR? It would be phi R is equal to phi m sin omega t, this phi Y is equal to phi m sin omega t minus 120-degree, phi b is equal to phi m sin omega t minus 240-degree. That is the flux. That is the flux created by the individual currents. The total flux will be sum of these three fluxes, which will come as 1.5 phi m constant value, and constantly it will changes the its direction. The magnitude of this rotating magnetic field is constant and is equal to 1.5 times phi m, where phi m is the maximum flux due to any phase. So, as I told you, the IR, IY, and IB currents in each of the phases, they produce these fluxes. Phi r is equal to phi m sin omega t, phi y is equal to phi m sin omega t minus 120-degree, phi b is equal to phi m sin omega t minus 240. So what would be the total flux? It is the phasor sum of phi r, phi y, and phi b. Okay. So what we will do is we will consider at omega t is equal to 0 degree. Okay, when omega t is equal to 0, phi r is equal to phi m sine of 0. We get it as phi r is equal to 0. Okay, so similarly, phi r is equal to 0, phi y phi m sine 0 minus 120, phi b phi m sine 0 minus 240. So phi r is 0, phi y is phi m sine of minus 120. We get it as minus root 3 by 2 into phi m, and phi b is phi m into sine minus 240, which is root 3 by 2 into phi m. So we have to find the phasor, phasor sum of these three. The resultant flux is phi r plus phi y plus phi b. So phi r is 0. So the same diagram you can take. So this is phi r is 0, and how much is phi y? Phi y is minus root 3 by 2 into phi m. So this is plus phi y, and this is minus phi y. Minus phi y root 3 by 2 into phi m, and plus phi b. Phi b is how much? Plus root 3 by 2 into phi m. This is plus root 3 by 2 into phi m. If I add these two phasors, so these phasors are exactly equal. Okay, and if we add them, so we get it as something like that. I draw a line parallel to minus phi y and a line parallel to phi b. I get like this, and this is the resultant flux. Okay, and how to find that? Using a simple formula, that is phi r resulting flux. Okay, this is this phi r, not capital R lowercase r. Resultant phi r is equal to 2 times one of these values into cos of half of the angle, that is 60 by 2. So this is phi r is equal to 2 into root 3 by 2. That is that is one side of the vector, that is root 3 by 2 into phi m, cos of half the angle. So we get it as root 3 into root 3 by 2, that is 1.5. Now what is the resultant flux? It is 1.5 times the maximum flux phi m. So similarly, if we take next 30 degree, we took omega t is equal to 0. Now we will take omega t is equal to 30 degree. If we take omega t is equal to 30 degree, what we get is like phi r is equal to, okay, you have to substitute that and you have to find. Okay, so you have to substitute phi r is equal to sine of 30, right? So sine of 30 half phi m by 2. Now phi m is equal to phi m sine of 30 minus 120. So 30 minus 120 is minus 90 degrees, that is minus 1 minus phi m. Similarly, phi b is equal to phi m sine of 30 minus 240, that is sine of minus 210. So you have to find out all those and you have to draw the vector diagram. So I have done this is the vector diagram for phi m is equal to omega t is equal to 30 degree. I get phi r as phi m by 2, and phi y as minus phi m, and phi b as phi m by 2 again. So I get phi y is equal to minus phi m. So I will take it on the minus phi y. So on this side, if I take, it will come as minus phi m. First, I will take the vector sum of phi r and phi b. That is phi m by 2 and phi r and phi b. So what would be the vector sum of this and this? Angle between them is 120 degree. That would be resultant of phi r plus phi b. That is phi r dash is equal to 2 times 2 times phi m by 2 cos of 120 divided by 2, which I get it as phi r by phi m by 2. So that angle will come as same as this. Now I have to add these two. What would be the resultant? Phi r is equal to phi r dash, okay, phi r dash plus phi m. This is phi m. Phi r dash, how much I got? This is phi r dash. That is one. Phi r dash is nothing but phi m by 2. Phi m by 2 plus phi m is 1.5 phi m. Now, if you see, this is the resultant flux. Okay, 1.5 m. Now, this is the reference. When omega t was 0, the resultant flux was 1.5 phi m, but reference was it was with reference, so it was at a 0 angle. Now the total resistance, the resultant flux is 1.5 phi m only, but it has moved to 30 degree from reference. Similarly, if I take omega t is equal to 60 degree, it will be 1.5 and it will move by 60 degree. If I take omega t as 90 degree, the resultant flux would be 1.5 m, but it will move by 90 degree. So on. If I take it as 180 degree, it will move by 180 degree, magnitude will remain 1.5. So hence it proves that the three-phase power given to three-phase winding will result in a rotating magnetic field which has a magnitude of 1.5, constant value of 1.5 m. Okay, now we proved that whenever we give a three-phase power to three-phase winding, it creates a rotating magnetic field. And what is the magnitude of that field? It is equal to 1.5 m, and phi m is maximum flux created by any one phase. So that is how we get the rotating magnetic field. Now we said it is a rotating magnetic field. It will rotate with certain speed. The speed at which the rotating magnetic field rotates is called as a synchronous speed. So that particular field is rotating with a certain speed. That speed is called as a synchronous speed, and it is denoted by ns. And how we calculate the synchronous speed? Ns is equal to 120 f divided by p. For a given motor, okay, induction motor, number of poles are fixed, isn't it? So p is fixed. So already motor is constructed, either it is constructed with the 4 poles or 8 poles. P is fixed. And in India, okay, every country has a fixed frequency. Okay, f is fixed. So for a given induction motor, the synchronous speed is fixed. So for example, if we have number of poles are 10, and then frequency is 50 hertz, so what we get is 120 into 50 divided by 10. Okay, so that is the speed of the that would be the synchronous speed that is represented in the rpm, rotations per minute. Then slip, I told you uh, uh, how the rotor rotates. There is a rotating magnetic field is created. It rotates with a synchronous speed. Magnetic field rotates with a synchronous speed, and it cuts the rotor conductor cuts the that flux. EMF is induced. So EMF induced will result in a current, rotor current, because it is short circuited. Now current carrying conductors are placed in a magnetic field, experiences a force, and the rotor will start slowly rotating, and it will rotate to catch up to the synchronous speed. So it will rotate with such a speed to catch up the synchronous speed, but it will not be able to catch up the synchronous speed. It will be little behind. So there is a little difference between the speed of the rotor and the speed of the synchronous speed. As I told you, if synchronous speed is 1500, maybe rotor will rotate to the maximum speed of 1450. So there is a difference of 50 rpm. That is called as the slip. The slip is nothing but the difference between the synchronous speed ns and the actual rotor speed. It is called as a slip, and slip is represented in terms of either fraction or in terms of a percentage. So percentage slip is ns minus n divided by ns into 100. This is percentage. If it is represented as a fraction, ns minus n divided by ns. From the exam perspective, please remember the formula. Formula, ns is equal to 120 f by p. Then slip, percent slip is ns by ns minus n divided by ns into 100. Fractional slip, s is equal to ns minus n divided by ns. Don't multiply by 100. Depending upon how the problem is given, whether percentage or fraction, accordingly you have to use the particular formula. There is one more small derivation for the rotor current frequency. As I told you, there is a current that flows in the rotor. That rotor current has a certain frequency. So how to calculate that? Frequency of the induced voltage or the current is given by f dash is equal to n dash p divided by 120. So f dash is nothing but the rotor current, and n dash is nothing but the ns minus n. When the rotor is a rotating magnetic field. EMF is induced in the rotor conductor. EMF frequency is given by F dash is equal to, what is this, N dash. F dash is equal to N dash P by 120. N dash is Ns minus N into P divided by 120, and ns just multiplied ns into p minus np divided by 120. We multiply both numerator and denominator by ns, and restructuring this one as ns minus n divided by ns into p into ns divided by 120. So we know that what is ns minus n divided by ns, it is nothing but the slip. So slip into ns into p divided by 120. But we also know what is this ns nsp into nsp into p divided by 120. This is nothing but the frequency f, right? So we can write f dash is equal to sf. So what is the meaning of this? The rotor current frequency is equal to slip into the supply frequency. So now we can understand what would be the initial speed of the rotor when you give the supply. Rotor is standstill. So what would be the slip? Ns minus n divided by ns. N is 0. So ns divided by ns is 1. So this is 1 into 50 hertz. So when motor is about to start, what would be the rotor current frequency? It would be same as the supply frequency. As the rotor starts rotating, it picks up the speed. Then what happens? Let us say the motor is running with 1400, and 1500 is the 1500 is the synchronous speed. So what would be the slip? It is ns minus n divided by 1000, ns minus n divided by ns, that is 1500 minus 1400 divided by 1500, right? So it is 100 by 1500. So it is a very small fraction. Let us say it is comes as a 0.1. So 0.1 into 50, 0.1 into 50 is how much? 5 hertz. So as the motor picks up to the maximum speed, the rotor frequency will reduce. So initially it will be same as the supply frequency. As motor starts picking up the speed, slowly its frequency will come down to a very small value. And normally the rotor frequency is about 2 hertz. Okay, normally the slip would be in the range of less than 5%. Okay, so that would be the range of the slip. 5% in the sense, if motor is running at 1500, maybe like synchronous speed is 1000, then motor will run around maximum like 950 rpm. Next is a star delta starter. Okay, star delta starter conceptually. So this is the, in the notes this connection is incorrect. So you have to take the connection like this. Okay, so this is the supply main switch. That main switch is connected to this. So this part. Okay, this part is drawn here. So you can imagine here, this is R phase inner. This you can take it as R phase, R dash. It is connected to the top terminal. Okay, so it is this 1, 2, 3 is representative of these two. So this is connected to the top. It is connected here. Y dash is connected here, and B dash this connected to the middle. Now, what happens is in this particular case, when we apply the three-phase supply, it creates rotating magnetic field. EMF is generated in the rotor. Current will start flowing in the rotor. Because the resistance is very less, huge amount of current will flow in the rotor conductors, which might damage the conductors. Because of the high current, we have to limit the initial current. What is one of the way is to use the star delta starter. As you already know, when we are putting it in the star, the amount of voltage that is applied to the each phase is it would be VL divided by root 3. That is the phase voltage. So initially we will put the winding. Okay, we will give the voltage of a VL by root 3. Once motor starts running to the full speed, we put it onto the run side. Okay, initially it will be put on the star connection, because voltage is reduced by VL by root 3. Whatever the supply voltage, VL by root 3 is applied to the phase, and the current is also reduced in the rotor currents, so it will make it as safe. Once the motor starts running to the speed, the current will reduce, then you can put it to the a delta connection. That is the concept behind here. So during the start, the voltage will get divided, voltage applied to the phase will get divided by VL by root 3. So amount of current that is induced will also reduce. In star data, starting initially the motor is running on star connection, then after rotates on, it will run to the delta connection. This circuit arrangement for star data starter is shown. So either if you use this connection, or you can refer to any book where you will find the this connection is not correct. Okay, in star connection, phase voltage becomes V by root 3, where V is the line voltage. This reduces the starting current when motor picks up the speed. Change over to switch is connected. Change over switch is connected to delta connection. Then the stator gets the full line voltage. That is how the it makes the current to the safe level, and makes the motor to start safely. With star data starting, stator voltage reduces to V by root 3. This reduces the starting current. The reduction in the voltage is fixed, V by root 3. In this type of starter, there are many other type of a starter, but in this case, type of a starter, the concept is here is to reduce the voltage by root 3. So that will reduce the initial current.